I call Todd Muller.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and it's a great privilege to be able to stand up on behalf of the Bay of Plenty region, one of the most strongest performing regions in the country. And firstly, that underpins that is, of course, the recent free trade agreement that we announced recently. And I want to acknowledge Tim Grosser in particular. He's a phenomenal advocate for New Zealand's interests overseas. Not only has it been TPP, and it will soon be the EU Free Trade Agreement, it's also the Korean Free Trade Agreement. And so well done to Tim Grosser, an absolute leader. But as I look across the House and I look at the opposition, and I was absolutely surprised that Labor Party in particular, I'm going to ignore the New Zealand First, who's always opposed to connecting ourselves to the world, but particularly the Labor Party, who have for the last 20 years held a view that we should be connected in the world, and particularly with respect to trade, we should be shoulder to shoulder, but not this leadership under Andrew Little. And what I find is there is a portion of the Labor Party that I would expect that. Those who are unionists, those who are academics, those who have never put a dollar of their own capital at risk to sell anything to anybody who's overseas and actually demands value. But there are 4 or 5 in that party, and I'm looking at 2 of them, David Parker and David Shearer, but I can add Damien O'Connor, Phil Goff, Clayton Cosgrove, who for the last 20 years have said, look, with respect to trade, we're going to be bipartisan, because we understand the benefit to New Zealand when you actually drive a decent and strong deal, which is exactly what Tim Grosser has done. And Mr Speaker, over the last 10 years, and indeed when they were in government, they were for the Chinese FTA. And in fact, they sat here on this side, supported by Tim Grosser, when there was only us as part of the P4, and tried to imagine how we can connect this small country at the bottom of the world with hardly any trade leverage into a part of a large economic trading bloc. And they were part of that thinking, and indeed they pursued it with vigour. And we managed to get the approval, of course, of the Chinese for that Chinese FTA, and that has been worth significant benefit not only to the country but particularly to where I've come from. And to now hear that they are sitting and opposing this is absolutely disgraceful, Mr Speaker. Absolutely disgraceful. They knew, and particularly the Phil Goffs and Clayton Cosgraves, they knew that from a small position we needed to negotiate hard. Yes, we have high principles, but ultimately we are just one of many, and we had to negotiate from the position that, of course, we find in ourselves. And I believe in their heart of hearts they know that if they were given the same opportunity, negotiating with 12 other countries, they would have landed the same deal. And in fact, I'm sure, David Parker, I've heard you say that. And so it is absolute nonsense that they have to now swallow their history and their involvement with free trade and be part of a caucus that says, no, we're not part of the world, we're not part of the largest trading bloc in the world, we're going to oppose it. Absolute nonsense, Mr Speaker. And they know in their heart of hearts, these few good men, that this actually has a whole lot of value for New Zealand. Right. And the truth of this is that this delivers, particularly TPP, $2.7 billion, $259 million, and that's all on the assumption that we don't sell anymore and that the price that we sell in those markets doesn't improve. They know the truth of this deal. The problem with that side, they just can't handle the truth, and they can't take that argument and win it to their caucus, and it's a disgrace, bearing in mind their 20 years of free trade pedigree, Mr Speaker. And in our town, and in Tauranga, and in Bay of Plenty, we know the value of this deal. When we can talk to the kiwifruit industry, $14,000 per orchardist. $14,000. And yes, New Zealand First, you can smile, it's a lot of money. And these are direct benefits to the kiwifruit industry of New Zealand, and particularly the Bay of Plenty. And that continues to drive one of the most extraordinary growth stories that is occurring in this country in my area. Mr Speaker, 4,700 more jobs in the last 12 months, up 138%. 4,700 more jobs, Mr Speaker. It's the fastest growing region in New Zealand, and I am absolutely proud to be part of a government that puts real issues on the table, grow the economy from that base, send decent investment to people who need it. That's leadership, and the nonsense that we've had to put up with for the last 2 hours from the opposition will condemn you to stay there for the next 10 years.
That's right.